Hey, welcome. Today we're diving into one of the most important processes for anyone trying to build something new, market research and customer discovery. Really, it's all about one thing, swapping out those risky guesses for real, hard evidence. This right here gets to the absolute heart of it. I mean, this is the nightmare scenario for every single entrepreneur, every creator, every product manager out there. It's a hugely expensive and sadly, a very common mistake. But the good news? It's one you can totally avoid. Okay, so let's get into it. The whole point of doing this research is to stop what you could call the billion-dollar mistake, spending all your energy building something that nobody actually needs. And you know what's kind of crazy? When you skip the research, the consequences are so predictable. It's not even like you're just taking a risk, you're pretty much setting yourself up to fail. You end up burning through time and money on features no one ever asked for. You target the complete wrong audience, you get totally blindsided by competitors you didn't even know existed, and in the end, you launch something that just falls flat. So that brings us to what is probably the single most important mindset shift you have to make. Seriously, this is the foundational truth for this entire process. I really want you to burn this quote into your brain, because your own ideas, your own experiences, your own preferences, they're usually your biggest blind spots. Thinking you already know what the customer wants without ever really asking them, that is one of the most dangerous things you can possibly do. This is such a brilliant way to picture the two sides of this coin. Think of market research like a telescope. You're zooming way out to see the big picture. You know, the whole market, what your competitors are up to, where the trends are headed. But then customer discovery, that's the microscope. You're zooming way in to understand the real human problems and motivations of one person. And here's the thing, to really succeed, you absolutely need both. Okay, so how do we actually do this, right? How do we go from making these dangerous assumptions to having real powerful insights? Let's open up the toolkit. So your research basically comes in two main flavors. On one hand, you've got qualitative. This is all about the why. You're doing deep, open-ended interviews with just a few people to really get at their core feelings and motivations. On the other hand, you've got quantitative. This is about the what and how much. Here, you're using things like surveys and data across a big group of people to measure trends and see if what you learned in the interviews holds up at scale. Then you got to decide, are you going to go find new data or use what's already out there? Primary research is you rolling up your sleeves, talking to customers directly. It's super specific to what you need, but yeah, it can take time. Secondary research is using existing stuff, like industry reports or what your competitors are doing. It's faster, it's cheaper, but it might not perfectly answer your specific questions. A really good strategy uses a mix of both. And you know, the process itself is actually pretty straightforward. First, you just figure out exactly what you need to learn. Be super clear about it. Then, you pick the right tools for the job. You go out and do the research. And then, and this is the magic step, you take all that messy, raw data and you turn it into a clear, actionable insight that's going to guide every decision you make. All right, theory is great, but let's see how this plays out in the real world. We're going to look at a couple of amazing examples from companies that just totally nailed this. So, first up, Airbnb. They had this great idea, right? But in the early days, nobody was booking. People just weren't converting. The founders were totally stumped. So what was going on? Now, here's the brilliant part. Instead of just guessing or staring at spreadsheets in their office, the founders literally flew to New York City and went to their hosts' apartments. They got right up close to the problem. And they found out the insight wasn't some complex technical thing. It was human. The photos were just terrible. They didn't build any trust, and they certainly didn't make you want to stay there. So what they do? Did they go build some complicated new photo uploading tool? Nope. They ran the simplest, cheapest test imaginable. They rented a nice camera and went and took professional photos themselves. And the payoff? Bookings doubled instantly. It's just a perfect example of how a low-cost test can prove what the real problem is and save you from building the totally wrong thing. Okay, now for a totally different story, but one that's just as powerful. A lot of people have no idea that Slack actually started out as a gaming company. The game they were building, well, it wasn't really taking off. But they started to notice something really interesting about their own team. The key insight came from their own pain. They realized that this little internal tool they had built just to talk to each other was actually way more valuable than the game they were trying to sell. See, they didn't solve the surface-level problem of, we need a better chat app. They solved the much, much deeper problem, that communication at work was totally broken. It was fragmented, it was slow, and it was making it really hard to get anything done. So what happens when you solve a problem that deep, that painful for that many people? You get this, 500,000 daily active users in the first year. I mean, that's just incredible. That is what product market fit looks like when you listen to the real problem. So we've talked about what to do, but honestly, knowing what not to do is just as critical. Let's look at some of the most common traps people fall into. The number one trap by far is confirmation bias. That's when you ask questions that kind of guide people to the answer you want to hear. So instead of asking something like, don't you think this feature would be useful? You ask an open-ended question. Hey, could you walk me through how you currently handle this? That question doesn't give them an answer. It lets them tell you their story. And that's where you find the truth. And here are two more huge mistakes you've got to avoid. First, talking to the wrong people. Getting feedback from your friends or your mom who just want to be nice to you, it's worthless. It might even mislead you. You have to talk to your actual target customers. And second, never ask them what features they want. It's your job to understand their problems deeply. It's not their job to design the solution for you. So I want to leave you with this one final thought. The entire goal of everything we just talked about is to identify and then challenge your own assumptions. Because the one you're most certain about, the one that feels so obvious you don't even think to question it, that's almost always your biggest risk. So take a second and ask yourself, what's my biggest assumption? And how can I start testing it today?